On the surface, my life was on track. I was a medical laboratory scientist with a degree in biochemistry, and I was preparing for a PhD. My mind was trained to see the world in data and repeatable results, but inside, I was lost. I was lost amidst the sea of depression and this overwhelming feeling that there had to be something more. Have you ever had an experience you couldn't quite explain? A moment where you felt so deeply connected to everything around you. For years, both as a scientist and as a seeker, I asked pretty much anybody who would listen these questions. You see, my journey to find this more didn't begin in the lab, but in the space of quiet meditation. As I started to heal, I was faced with a profound choice, a voice that asked, do you want to help the world by studying the brain, or by showing people how you healed your mind? I chose the latter, and I decided to call my dad, whom I often refer to as my first spiritual teacher. Years ago, he hosted these gatherings in our home for people to explore science and spirituality, and he called them Onion Soup. When I decided to create a space for these conversations, I asked my dad if I could carry on the name. He gave me his blessing, and the podcast was born. Onion Soup. The name itself is our philosophy. Life, consciousness, and the universe are all like an onion. As we peel back one layer, we find another. And just like a hearty bowl of soup, these deep conversations are meant to be comforting, nourishing, and soothing to the soul. Onion Soup is more than just a podcast. It's a space for those who are curious and those who are seekers. A place to be inspired to expand your own awareness and to soothe the soul by resonating with what your spirit already knows is true. Today, that space is growing. It's so much bigger than what I could have ever imagined. But to write this next chapter, I need your help. I'm inviting you to become a true partner in our mission. With your support through this Patreon, we can achieve 3 critical goals together. First, sustainability. To provide the resources to make Onion Soup a fully sustainable long-term project. Second, elevation. To reinvest, improving our sound and video quality. And to travel the world conducting powerful on-site interviews with our guests face-to-face. And third, expansion. To build the professional assets needed to bring our conversations to a major network, sharing this work with millions. If this message resonates with you, please look at our tiers below. For as little as $5 a month, you can get ad-free episodes and join our private community. You can become a supporter, an insider, a co-creator, or even a partner in this vision. Whatever you choose, thank you for being here and for being a part of the Onion Soup journey. Now, let's peel back these layers together. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Onion Soup. I'm truly excited to have our guest on today, Mr. Samuel Salgado. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing wonderful. So I'm truly excited to talk about, everything you have going on. We were just talking briefly before the show got started about how you got everything going. So tell us a little bit about Decent Med and the Merlin Group.
Yeah, so the Merlin Group started in 2020. What we found was we started with trends. And we found the 7 trends of 2020. And those trends were preventative intelligence, blockchain, 5G, IoT, AI, crypto, and medical distrust, which is one of the big ones that we found, especially towards the tail end of 2020. And we started the Merlin Group for a marketing company. My background's in digital marketing. I graduated with a degree from Florida Gulf Coast, Wings Up, in 2019. And my business partner, who's not with me anymore, but he was at the time, his background was in supply chain. So we were doing digital marketing for stem cell therapy. And what we found was stem cell therapy was extremely maligned and censored. You couldn't do Google ads. You couldn't really do much SEO. You really couldn't explain the benefit of it. So it led me to the reason of why. So it led me down a rabbit hole to a book called Racketeering in Medicine, The Suppression of Alternatives by James P. Carter. And in that book, I learned all about the suppression of chiropractic, the fact that it wasn't an MD until the 80s, the suppression of AIDS treatments and AIDS drugs, the suppression of obviously cancer, suppression of chelation therapy, which if you don't know what that is, it's the removal of toxic metals from the bloodstream. Your audience is probably in the States, so if they are, metal in the water, metal in the food. If you've ever been to a dentist, there's amalgam. So we have metal in our bodies. If you took the vaccine, there's metal in that as well. So there's so much metal in our bodies. And when it comes to heart disease, mainly is due towards a carotid artery. What that basically means is that you have plaque buildup, right? If you have a cut on my leg, scabs. If that scabs in your artery, it builds up plaque. And what that does, that causes a traffic jam. And then what can happen is stable plaque can get caught up in your arteries. Now you have things like angina, which is chest pain. You have erectile dysfunction, which a lot of men struggle with, things like that. But what you can have that's even worse is what's called unstable plaque. And that leads to strokes, arrhythmia, and a severe heart disease, which, as you guys probably know, is the number one killer in the world, is heart disease. So we found that all of these treatments were maligned. So then we said, okay, well, why not build a platform that showcases all of it? So we built a platform that showcased at the beginning acupuncture, chiropractic, chelation, stem cell therapy, nutrition, hypnotherapy, homeopathy, and detox. We found that the holistic medicine industry is so much bigger than that. So we decided to add coaches. We decided to add spiritual coaching. We decided to add breath work. We decided to add naturopathy. We decided to add all of these modalities because this industry is so much bigger. Then this year, we met a provider that created a documentary on PTSD, utilizing plant medicine and somatic exercise for PTSD. The guy he's from the Israeli army and he struggled with PTSD. So we did a 5-day retreat in Panama. First day, he imbibed cannabis. He did somatic yoga and exercise. And he also did rapé, followed by combo with rapé the second day, combo with rapé the third day, and then bufo with rapé the final day. And he explains in that state towards the end, where he's coming down all this stuff, how he felt like he was being programmed. And so many Americans are, so many people around the world are. And it helped him to get out of the program and realize that the Palestinians were really all the same. So it was a very cathartic experience for him. And that really helped me to build the platform into what it is. And to building it is something where it's a canvas, just like this wall behind me. It's a blank canvas that providers can build whatever they want. So then we thought to ourselves, what is it that people are really struggling with as far as providers? And there's really three main things: patient acquisition, patient misconception, and insurance reimbursement. So the first one, with my background being in marketing, 7+ years of experience in marketing, we decided to build unique digital marketing experiences and digital marketing campaigns for all types of providers on our platform, as well as custom pages, and everything based on conversion. So there's 5 major steps of conversion that we base all of our custom pages on. The first one is an interview. So when people are searching for something, they want to learn more about the topic. If you want to learn more about holistic health, maybe you come to Onion Soup. Then after you find out what holistic health is, then you go and you search for providers. What if you could have it all in the exact same spot, where the provider is the one actually educating you, and then that information and getting access to them is right there. It's a button click away. So then we said, okay, that's great. But what about the fact of the effectiveness of these treatments? So with my background being in technology, I decided to utilize a platform called Noster, where with Noster, I can post provider studies and provider information. Currently, we have 4 cancer documentaries, as well as a naturopath study, a hypnotherapy study, and a nutritionist study currently on the platform. So that, but at the same time that's on the platform, if God forbid anything ever happened, all that information via Noster and via my website goes directly into the Noster platform, and it's censorship resistant, or as close to censorship resistant as you can get, because we control the keys. We did that because we can validate the effectiveness of these treatments, but at the same time, not only do we validate that these treatments work, but you can see for yourself that they work. One of the biggest issues with providers, where they have 10,000 followers, they have a clinic that's completely booked up, they're on a waiting list for 3 months, or they're just getting started. Maybe they've only been in the industry for a couple months, or they just started their practice. Either way, the issue that they face is that big pharma, PubMed, and these journals, they don't want to pick up their work. And if they do pick up their work, nobody wants to fund their work. And in order to fund their work, that's how you can have trials and really get access to treatments. So we decided to say, let's just give everybody the info. Information is power. And the final element of the project I'm the most proud of is I've currently been traveling the world. Been in Mexico, Canada, Argentina, Paraguay, Suriname, Barbados, and of course in the United States as well, in the last year, highlighting plants of medicinal value. Right now we have over 150 plants on our apothecary, and via our apothecary, our goal is to create an insurance system in which, let's just make the numbers simple. Let's say acupuncture costs $100 a treat. Providers get 1 or 5% depending on what tier they join. So let's say they join for the 1% tier. Provider joins each plant. Now 1% of that sale is $1 off. So as the treatment, or as the apothecary gets bigger and bigger, now that's 1 free treatment for someone. And eventually, we like our apothecary to get so large that providers can just focus on healing, and our apothecary can be the signal bearer, or the thing that really carries everything through. So that's a little bit about the platform from 2020 to now.
Wow. So, Sam, let me ask you this. What would you say to somebody they're just getting started in naturopathy? They don't know much about holistic science and holistic health, and they don't know where to even begin on your site. And I went through your site, I thought it was beautiful, but they don't know where to look. What if they get intimidated by all different options? Where would you point someone?
So I would say start with your ailment. If you have anxiety, so start with anxiety. That way, okay, chiropractic, that's not going to probably help me with anxiety. Nutrition, that's probably not going to help me with anxiety. But applied kinesiology, the merlingroupworld.com/AK, she works with anxiety. She utilizes unique treatments to help with anxiety. Or if you are looking for coaching, right? You're burned out, right? Acupuncture helps with burnout. So you want to start with the ailment, because if you don't start with the ailment, like you said, you can get confused, because the platform is very unique. It's a mixture of B2B and B2C. So you go as a B2C, as a patient, and you go on the platform and you get overwhelmed because there's so many different kinds of providers, there's information, there's videos. But if you start with your ailment, now it becomes a lot simpler. Now, okay, applied kinesiology, that can help me with anxiety. Acupuncture, that can possibly help me with anxiety. Transformational empowerment coaching, that can help me with anxiety. Herbal medicine, maybe there's some herbs that can help me with anxiety. Or maybe you are overweight. If you're overweight, then nutrition's the way to go. Or maybe you have a degenerative disease, or your son or your daughter has autism. Well, you look at something like applied kinesiology or clinical kinesiology. So you really want to start with your ailment, and then it expands.
What about if you've heard all these things about naturopathic therapies and medicine not being as effective? I mean, you mentioned how there's not a lot of trials and research out there, and you also mentioned the racketeering of medicine. So what's going on where the people, our society, just don't have access to the information or the science backing homeopathic therapy.
Open your mind and expand your consciousness. Welcome to Chakra Wonders, where style meets soul. Designed to uplift your energy and inspire your path to higher awareness. Every piece is a reflection of the cosmos and the power within you. Explore our collection and discover what resonates with your soul. Visit chakrawonders.com and step into conscious living. Chakra Wonders, conscious style for a conscious world.
Great question, especially when it comes to naturopathic medicine. And I'd love to go over our study that we did with Kristen Barnes, but I want to answer that second part of your question first. I asked our first provider on the platform that same question you asked me, but about cancer, because she's an Ayurvedist that works in a cancer clinic. And I asked her, I said, why is there no cure to cancer? And she said, because they don't want it to be. And then I asked a marketing girl on our team, and she works on YouTube and optimizing YouTube thumbnails. And she said, one thing I found really interesting is that there's no video that has 1 million views about holistic health. So it really is an active censorship. And when it comes to naturopathic medicine, the first thing to start with is not necessarily the ailment. It's realizing the mind, body, spirit of it all. It's realizing the holistic nature. It's also realizing, and I'll get to the case study now. If you want to follow along, it's at themerlinggroupworld.com/naturopathy. So Kristen Barnes had a female that was in her late 30s to early 40s. And notice that she had a myriad of diseases, because that's one of the biggest things to answer your question about naturopathy versus traditional medicine, is that with naturopathy, it typically occurs in which you have a myriad of diseases or disorders that you feel, and you've been to a multiplicity of doctors and practitioners. Like in this case, she was going to 20 years of various practitioners, nutritionists, different kinds of naturopaths, and she couldn't see a result. She had pyrrole disorder, an eating disorder, childhood trauma, chronic yeast infections, food sensitivities, mold exposure, extensive antibiotic use. But notice that childhood trauma. Back to naturopathy, most people aren't looking at the trauma side of it. They're not looking at what could be the reason why you have all these disorders. So by the time she came to see Dr. Barnes, the patient had spent about 2 decades searching for relief. She had some well-intended treatments, but they had all made her worse. She often dismissed it as if no one was looking deeper or considering her full story. Initial treatment for pyrrole disorder targeted various vitamins, some anxiety relief, but the rest of her symptoms remained. Something was still missing. So Dr. Barnes utilized a unique approach: genetic testing for nutrient metabolism, a SIBO breath test, and candida screening. These uncovered several key contributors. One was nutrient absorption issues related to genetics. 2, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This was likely due to chronic constipation, and that could have been due to her long use of antibiotics, which made her candida worse. So back to naturopathy and why it's different, and really why holistic medicine is different, is because they take a personalized approach. Dr. Barnes likes to call it a layered approach. Her plan included targeted supplementation to support genetic vulnerabilities, antimicrobial support for SIBO and yeast, gentle gut healing protocols, nervous system support and mental health regulation, and nutritional changes to reduce symptom triggers. And in her words, "You gave me my life back. I didn't know I would ever feel good again." Her key takeaways was that her healing chronic illness requires looking at multiple, this is from Dr. Barnes, requires looking at multiple systems over time. Eclectic and individualized testing can uncover hidden root causes. Layered treatments is often necessary, especially when addressing trauma, gut health, and immune imbalances. And typically those things are correlated. And finally, She said that you don't have to just live with it. Even long-standing conditions can shift with the right care. So notice how when I touch on naturopathy, there's three things that are different. The first one is that she took a layered approach that was multi-factored and multifaceted, that included the mind, the body, and the spirit. The second thing that she did was that she didn't just look at the whole picture in her holistic approach, but she also focused on natural cures and personalized care. And finally, she helped to deal with the chronic conditions because of her approach. So to answer your question, the way that naturopathy works in a better way, and this is why there needs to be more studies, because it's more complicated. Naturopathy, typically the patient base is someone that has been to multiple doctors, that has tried multiple things, and it just didn't work. We've seen this with the applied kinesiologist. We've seen this even with some of the acupuncturists on our platform. Hell, we've even seen this with chiropractic, is that a lot of times the reality is that the patient has gone to traditional medicine, tried and tried again, and it has failed. So when it comes to treatment, you really want to look at, does the provider apply a unique holistic approach? In the case of Dr. Ballins is a certified acupuncturist and a certified nutritionist. So she knows how to apply different modalities.
No, Samuel, you mentioned the mind, body, and spirit, and it's very easy for people to place a idea or concept on the mind and body. But what role does spiritual health play in holistic therapy?
Great question. So you look at stuff like yoga, meditation. See, when people think of spirit, they think of religion, but that's not what it is. Spirit, a better way to put it, could be the fascia, right? And if anyone that doesn't know it, the fascia is like a thin layer that goes all over your body that covers you from head to toe. And then you also can look at spirit from the sense of energy. And a lot of people, when they think of energy, they think of woo, but it's very scientific. Great example of this is with food. If you're eating food from a gas station or food from the vending machine, well, it will keep you alive, but there's no energy in the food. But if you're eating plants, if you're eating vegetables, if you're eating foods and supplements that are from the ground, then that spirit, that energy is going to come in you and it's going to help your body to heal itself, because the body has an immense regenerative potential to heal itself. So when it comes to the spirit, taps into that, right? Even acupuncture is meridians, right? This is why when you look at, if you have a partner and if your partner just does this, doesn't even touch you, they just put their hand right above your body, you can feel their energy radiating off of you. So the biggest issue that traditional medicine makes is they completely avoid the soul and the spirit altogether. They focus on pills. They focus on surgery. But the problem with those things is that those things are actually weakening your immune system, so that your immune system now is needing more of the medication, even when it comes to Tylenol or different kind or Motrin for headaches. You're better off doing breath work and being hydrated and tapping into your body. This is why, to answer your question about holistic medicine, why holistic medicine has been so closely associated with the plant medicine, cannabis, psychedelics, because they tap into something that's bigger than us. They get into the body, because that's what somatic exercise is. Somatic exercise is getting into the body, right? And breathing it out. See, the problem is, even when it comes to the mind and the body, when it comes to traditional medicine, they just tell you to work out, right? But the reality is that the way to actually heal yourself is by putting yourself in pain so that you can breathe it out or sweat it out. So all of these things are connected. They're just not called that same term. Even Ayurveda, right? People don't know what Ayurveda is, but if I said seasonal nutrition, if I said turmeric, if I said meditation, if I said yoga, you would know what that is. All of those things come from Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is the oldest medicine. And then finally, when you look at the spirit and holistic medicine, there was a documentary on Netflix. It was talking about the blue zones. I'm forgetting exactly what the name of the documentary was, but he was going in all these different places where people were living to be 100. And he was trying to figure out why that was. And one of those reasons why was there only one place in the whole U.S. that has a blue zone. It's in California, where the Church of Latter-day Saints is. That's because they have community. There's other elements too, nutrition, the fact that they're outside, the fact that they're working, the fact that but the biggest thing is the community. And community plays a big role when it comes to the spirit and the soul. That is why we need each other. That's why when people are alone, they tend to have mental breakdowns. So when it comes to holistic medicine and the tie-in between spirit, the mind, and the body is the fact that it's all connected, and the fact that we need each other. That's the spirit. We need to eat foods that are benefiting our body. And we also need to do things to stimulate our mind. That's why you have to be careful what you listen to. It's good to have positive thoughts. So all of those things are connected.
What would you say? What would you say to someone that has like a autoimmune disease or disorder, or perhaps a genetic issue?